Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of the episode Chicken Shack, where we discuss gaming on
On
Free
the
Soda.
Free Soda
Let's
podcast.
do that again.
No. That's how we're going to take it in. That was
All
perfect,
right.
Matthew. Lovely job. So, if you weren't here last time, which doesn't make sense, but hypothetically, we won a game of Apex Legends, which we are playing while recording this episode to, throw us right into the madness of our conversation.
It doesn't even really make sense if you're here right now anyway, but
Thank you, Harold. So right now what we're loading into is something called a quest in Apex Legends. And this is something newly incorporated into the game. Harold was talking about during the last episode how they continue to change the facets of the games to give it more playability and new features. And this is one of the things that came with season 5 of Apex. So the quest system is basically giving the characters in the game a narrative arc. And all right, we're not loading into the quest game. So I'm gonna continue that later. But until now, we're actually dropping into a normal round. And a cool thing about Apex is the fact
like
that
this.
if you win, you are represented all over the map as the champion squad. Harold, do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's just something that's unique to this specific game. I think a lot of games have little things like this. Fortnite has their dances. Wow, I really just wrote that off.
Oh,
But
sorry.
but no. So one thing that's really cool about the specific game is that you as Samuel was saying, if you won the last round or if you're the highest ranking squad, from your previous round, there are banners hanging all across the map, showing that you are quote the champion squad. And so and if you take down the champion squad, if you're not the champion squad and you take down the champion squad, you get extra points, I suppose you could say. But that's another sort of cool thing is, it's not, you don't just level up. There's also sort of a sort of glory, fame kind of thing system built into the game, which I think is kind of interesting. So there are multiple ways to look cool, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I think that it gives the round a little bit more character because one squad goes in with basically a target on their head, like a bounty, and everyone's out to get them. So it adds another layer to the gameplay.
I agree.
But as we foreshadowed, this episode is gonna this half of the episode is going to be a little less esports focus. So we're gonna start off by talking about one of the most played games in the world, second only to Dota 2, Minecraft. Created by Mojang, an iconic cube-based game that I know most people are familiar with. And
most sold game, isn't it? Isn't it
what?
the most sold game of all time?
Yes, it's the most sold, but not the most played. Interestingly enough, the most played game is Dota 2.
Ah, sorry.
I'm not even aware of that game.
Dota 2 is like League of Legends, but less bad. Anyway.
There are some opinions being bantered about there.
Now,
I argue, except I don't know what it is yet again.
Now, we talked about during the last episode, kids playing video games. And, what do you think is the difference, if any, if you consider there to be a difference between a kid playing, Apex Legends or Fortnite versus Minecraft? Because I personally think Minecraft is good for kids.
Yeah, it's creative. Good for your brain.
There definitely is some sort of violence component.
Yeah, because you have to survive. You have to fight the monsters.
You have to kill livestock to feed
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, yeah, it's not zero, but it's there is. I think
there's less sensory input.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think that one of the reasons that Minecraft is so revolutionary, or was so revolutionary, is it's so cool, is because of the creative function.
Yeah, and I
make anything you want.
Mm-hmm. And I kept using the term sandbox a lot, and I think that Minecraft is, a true sandbox in regards to video games because, well, it's not only like an opportunity and a platform to take risks, like it's an opportunity and platform to express yourself and be creative and test new things more so than I think, a first-person shooter is.
Mm-hmm.
You can also disagree, Harold, and I saw you frown and scoff at that comment. No? Okay. I read you wrong.
No, okay. Well, to be completely honest, Matthew picked up a gun I really wanted, but it's okay.
Would you like the Mastiff?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I did drop something else I did want. So sorry, I'm just a bit distracted. No, I agree. And again, speaking from my experience, Minecraft was the first game I ever really played,
Mhm.
and I played it on so many different platforms. I played it on mobile, on an iPad, on a phone, on Xbox, on PC. So
Am I wrong to remember, Harold, that in middle school when we took a spring break trip, fortunately, really cool trip to the Amazon rainforest, that on the plane ride there, you played Minecraft on an iPad? Am I wrong?
I would be very surprised.
Really?
But if I mean, not to say that that's impossible,
Hmm.
but I would be very.
Well, my point to make there is that it's everywhere. Like it's
Oh,
it's
yeah,
such an
it's
iconic one.
ubiquitous.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that people want games, more games like Minecraft. And like it's hard to kind of create something on the scale of Minecraft because they make it like basically boundless capacity, but everything's blocks. So graphics and horsepower aren't that big of a deal. But I think people want more games where they can. Is it wrong of me to feel like gods in some
Yeah.
ways? It's
Well,
just
yeah,
really cool opportunities.
exactly. It provides opportunities that you would never really have.
Hmm.
Like you can't build a mansion in 20 minutes that's exactly to your specifications.
Yeah. Also, they have pandas now.
That's true.
They have many animals now.
So this is a real tangent, and maybe I should have saved this for later. But I think one thing, there are so many things to talk about, really. But one thing that we can really talk about is, new ways to consume video games. And I mentioned, there are different consoles you can play on a computer, or on a mobile device like an iPhone or an iPad or whatever. But so it's something we can definitely bring up is what is virtual reality doing to the
Oh,
to
snap.
the game world, and because I think that definitely throws a bit of a spanner in the works of basically
Mhm.
like of everything we've been talking about so far. So, I mean, would you like to save that for later, or
I mean,
touch on
if
it
you
a
want
little
to
bit
talk
now?
VR, we can talk VR.
I mean, I've only ever used VR once,
Yeah.
and for like 5 minutes,
I've
but it
used
was
it
really
a
weird.
couple times. Yeah.
So it's still kind of a rarity.
No, VR is absolutely a rarity. And I think that, well, actually, Matthew should go first because I'll be a while.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Fair. I don't know if I have much to say. I mean, it's fun. I worry a little bit about like people losing themselves in it, or like I don't think anytime in the super near future people are gonna like be in virtual reality too much that it like affects their sense of real reality. That's a redundancy.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I mean, another interesting thing that like hasn't come into place too much yet is augmented reality.
Mhm.
Because that could be coming around soon. I don't remember the name of this other augmented reality that's being developed, but
What about Pokemon Go? Isn't that augmented reality?
That is augmented reality.
uh,
Yeah.
that's
That does follow
true.
the term.
um, no, but I don't know. I might be rambling at this point, so I should just hand it over to Samuel. But
Oh, geez. Okay.
Our
Here
resident
we go.
expert on virtual reality.
Yeah,
yes,
sure. Let's pretend that's true. So, I think that there are a few issues with VR up front. It's not super accessible, it's expensive, and
that's
it's
true.
still clunky. Like one of the main VR brands, Oculus, started off with, basically a toaster oven that you strap to your face, but
Yeah.
progressively it gets
Seems
lighter
hazardous.
and more compact. And I think that
What if you stick a fork in it?
Okay.
okay, that's weird. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I'm going to preface this with that, like, VR needs time, just like the smartphones need the smartphones.
The
Smartphones
smartphone.
needed time to condense and to also get cheaper. Like
Hmm.
first technology compacts and gets like more accessible and like less of a brick to carry around, and then
Yeah.
it gets cheaper as more people begin to make it. And I think that it will be a while until VR does that. but people who can afford VR, like full VR setups, like fully enjoy it. And especially in times like quarantine, it's a really nice thing to have.
Hmm.
And one of the most recent versions of the Oculus Rift, the Oculus Quest, is a standalone device that doesn't need to be plugged into anything. And it's relatively cheap. It's $300 at base. And you basically can go anywhere with it, draw a play area virtually, and then it will bring that area to life and give you like a space to work in. And that sold better than any other Oculus product or VR product for that matter. So I think that it is, the want is there. It's just, it's like that cost to want ratio that still isn't quite right yet.
Hmm.
But I think it is the future of gaming and education and augmented reality more for the medical field and for, engineers that can bring their blueprints and scales up like right in front of their eyes holographically and construct in that manner. So I do think it is the next step. It just may be a while.
It's interesting that you were talking about. I think you brought up education there, didn't
Mhm.
you? The we sort of touched on this in part one, but about how you know the internet and video games are really becoming so deeply ingrained in our culture.
Mhm.
Um, and the internet is considered like a basic an essential human need like
Mhm.
today. And so I think it's interesting how video games, the internet, all of this stuff has been integrated into our lives, especially with education. And I remember there's a long line of video games all in sort of the same universe called Assassin's Creed, which sounds pretty
Oh,
violent, and in some sense it is quite violent. But
what is the game about? Sorry, I'm just not
so
familiar.
so it's for a long time it was my favorite video game line franchise. I don't know what you would call it, but mainly because I was so compelled by the storyline, which is
Mhm.
that there's this machine that you can use to access the experiences of your ancestors, which is really cool.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
the game revolves around you going back through the main character's ancestors and reliving their lives, um, which is really cool. So but one thing that is very impressive about that franchise is that they they make incredibly large video game maps
Mm.
to play around in. And so um, when when about I think maybe a couple of years ago at this point, they released a video game set in Egypt, ancient Egypt.
Yeah, this is a very famous game now.
Yeah, and they made it so that you could play the game. There's a mode that you could play in that
Mhm.
had no violence, no like leveling up or any of the like I would say classically fun parts of the game. Um, but it still had all of the quests and all of the like accurate history to it. So and it was a really incredible tool that a lot of students took advantage of, because it was such an incredible it provided such an incredible opportunity for students to walk around in what was fairly accurately, I mean, really well researched and very accurate ancient Egypt. And that was
Mhm.
just something that wasn't really possible and it wasn't so accessible before that game. And so um, they've started doing that more frequently in other games that are set in history. So I think that that's definitely something that's really cool
Yeah.
about how video games have been integrated into life.
Yeah. And I think another great thing about video games, especially the Assassin's Creed franchise, is that they kind of like eliminate the background noise in a way. They really isolate your voice in the narrative, and I think that that's important to like making sure the character or the player doesn't feel alienated from the game. Like because if there's all that fuzzy, like talking in the background, it's really hard for them to really find themselves and their identity as a player.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, have you ever played any games that were solo games where you played through a campaign or a storyline?
Yeah, Battlefront 2. I quite enjoyed the campaign there. I thought, I've watched all the Star Wars
Battlefront
movies.
for people who don't know is based on the Star Wars movies.
Right.
What's Star Wars?
Okay, we're
I
not
think
going that
that's a
far.
whole other podcast, but buddy.
Imagine. Oh, okay. So we're in a bit of a
So,
pickle
but
in the game, but that's fine.
yeah, continue, Matthew.
Yeah.
Ooh, I fell.
Oh no.
I was just going to say that that Battlefront 2 campaign. Jesus.
Language.
Sorry, apologies. Jeez, and crackers. I quite enjoyed the campaign. I thought it was fun to create a storyline off of already existing lore, something you enjoy, the movies, the franchise were familiar with. So I enjoyed seeing, post Death Star blown up, like immediately after what happens to the Empire is what that campaign sort of deals with. What happens to this group of specialized stormtroopers who have been serving the Empire and then their Emperor's dead. So it's what do they do now? So I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was very fun.
So how do you think that? I mean, how does that differ from games like this? More of a play against other live opponents. How does that differ in terms of like, education, development, or like social interaction?
Yeah, well, for one thing, I mean, you can't play the campaign. I mean, you can play it. You can overdo it a few times, but this will always be new and different. So you're trying to adapt more. I guess if you're doing the campaign for the first time, you have to adapt, but you're gonna have more social interaction, obviously, than if you're doing a solo campaign storyline playing Apex. But I don't know. It's sort of hard to it's hard to say. It's sort of apples and oranges for me, and I think I wouldn't compare them as to which is more benefit. I think I would just say like play either for which is more enjoyable, and then in terms of benefits of like video games, it's like you're gonna get either one with like reflexes or whatever from playing the video game in general. I wouldn't worry about playing the campaign because this is going to be better for my or Apex or something or Battle Royale game because this would be better for my like reflexes or something. I would just play for the sake of playing.
Yeah, I mean, first-person games usually associate themselves with the term RPG, and those are you're playing for the narrative most of the time. As cool as the mechanics and the fighting can actually be, you're usually so enthralled by the story that you actually pursue the game. And a lot of people prefer those games. So
Wow, awkward silence.
Sorry,
well,
we're all very
we're in
focused on this game.
we're back in that like top 4 range.
Very focused at the moment. We're gonna have to move. Oh wow, this is ambitious. Okay.
Sorry.
Ambition,
I
ambition is a
apologize.
big part of games. Sometimes you got to be ambitious to play.
That's true.
So we're back to one of those high stress environments, and it's similar to the one we were actually just at because it's at the same location, which is kind of crazy.
Quite
The ring's
surprising.
gonna end up in the middle of the storm. I mean, the ring's gonna end up in the middle of the empty field. That's interesting.
But this is when things get exciting, really, and this is when teamwork and
is.
strategy really comes into play.
No strategy.
I completely agree. and also, I mean, a big part of this game is actually communication with one another. And I was
Could
gonna
I
say,
go? Oh,
oh boy.
I was about to ask if I
Speaking
could
of
go into drone
communication,
view, and there's a
that,
fella in here.
we were talking about in my psychology class just the other day about about what we're grateful for, and as this year came to a close, and I was saying that I was actually quite grateful for video games. And because it's how I've been able to keep in touch with my closest friends, Matthew and Sam here.
Whoa.
And okay, I apologize. I know, I'm sorry. But it's crazy because I don't think maybe even 6 months ago we would be relying on video games exclusively to hang out with our very close friends.
Yeah.
I mean, physically close, as people who live really close to us.
Yeah.
So I mean, right now I definitely view it as a blessing
Mm-hmm.
more than a curse.
Yeah, I was talking to I think a common thing that my parents have been doing and several parents and families have been doing in quarantine is having sort of scheduled cocktail hour, as it were, Zoom calls with other parents and friends, just to catch up. And some family friends of ours, parents said that their kids are definitely using Xbox and video games as a way to stay connected. So yes, it's definitely a blessing in times like these because it's more difficult to do whatever more in-person activities you might, given social distancing rules. But
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we should probably move on to our secondary topic. Again,
sure.
moving away from esports and now moving away even from Minecraft and getting more into those kind of that RPG range of things. And I was wondering, would you guys personally just prefer to play something like Battlefront alone or something social like this?
Well, it's tricky because I would say initially social because this way you're having human interaction at least to a degree, and you get to communicate and talk to your friends and maintain those friendships or relationships you want to have. Um, I will say Apex can be frustrating or whatever, and there's definitely more pure satisfaction of playing. I got out of playing the Battlefront 2 campaign anyway. It's frustrating if you get stuck on one particular level, but there's a lot more satisfaction to, being able to take out a lot more AI players in a campaign than being really forced up against playing other people who might be more skilled than you. So it's difficult, but I would say all in all, doing a game where you can socially communicate is nice.
Yeah.
So now we're moving away from the battle royale
Okay.
aspect to a more campaign oriented.
So here we go. You know how we opened this episode saying we were going to do something called a quest? Well, now we're actually doing the quest. So this is Apex is trying to build a narrative into their game past development. So, we're already 5 seasons into the game and this is the first real narrative aspect of it. And there's a character called Loba and she's a bit of a treasure hunter and you play as any legend you want, but you have to, fight against kind of this wave-based combat units that look like velociraptors. And they're making these kind of, like your Indiana Jones trying to get the Crystal Skull situation quests as part of their new narrative arc for the game. And I was wondering how you guys feel about that being incorporated post-development, like as the game's already.
I think it makes sense because this was launched as. Sorry, I cut you off, but I think this was launched as a battle royale game. So, I think it definitely makes sense. But
I just think it's interesting, that you like build a game to be something else, and then you turn it into this. And I was wondering if you guys think are you guys chill with that?
Are we chill with that?
Yeah, I've definitely been enjoying it. I mean, the one thing that's weird though is that with Battlefront, as Matthew was talking about, that game you played straight through the campaign at least, and this the campaign, I suppose, equivalent here is much slower because it's actually on a weekly basis. Every week they release one more mission, and so it's actually yet another way to keep their players coming back. But again, it's been really effective because we're here. We've come back.
Right.
We're playing.
Yeah. And I think it's fun, like it's obviously not designed to be a dedicated like wave survival game, but it's still entertaining to play with the characters you always practice with online and fight against, these velociraptor thingies. And it's still social, it's not like going in alone, which I know Harold did at first when he was trying out the game before we actually played it for real, doing the quest rounds. And it's scary to play alone.
Yeah. The one thing that I was going to bring up actually is that the phrase jumping the shark, as in, which comes from a television show, well, essentially what it means is that
it actually comes from sharks, but that's all right.
Sure, that's also true. um, well, so there was a television show that added a scene, a really quite ridiculous scene where a man jumps over a shark, and so the term is now used frequently to refer to any like last ditch effort attempt to make something unpopular more popular. So I think that and I think that's pretty relevant here because um, a game like Fortnite has been around for a long time at this point. I mean, how long has Fortnite been around?
Maybe 4 years.
Maybe 4 years.
I apologize. I'm
Okay.
interrupting. How are we doing on time? Because I just got a notification that my computer is low on battery.
How
Okay.
low?
Battery's running low, as in like probably 6%.
Ooh,
Do you have a charger for that said computer?
I do. I would have to. I would have to go acquire said charger.
You should
what?
likely do that after we get to this ship
All right.
or this quest that we are playing.
Just to sort of finish what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I think that Fortnite has actually sort of walked this very thin line. That's what I mean. Thin line of what is, what is novel and what keeps players coming back, and what is just too much. And so far they've done some pretty ridiculous things, but and they've still got players coming back, which is pretty good. So
Yeah. I mean, I would come back for Travis Scott. I'm not even gonna lie.
Do you think Apex is ever going to get to this point, to that point?
I just don't think they'll ever have the base that Fortnite does. Like Fortnite has millions of kids just always on it. Like
I'm going to get the charger now.
Okay, we're losing a co-host. But they have a strong mobile platform, and then they have cross-play. It just gives this massive pool of participation that they can always capitalize on.
Which actually makes sense to me. Why Apex is trying to lean more into their like individualized, personalized characters and the storyline, because that's something that's unique. So I think that's pretty smart of them. They're trying to distance themselves from other similar games.
Yeah. So while we leave, while our co-host goes to find a charger, Harold, how are you feeling about this game right now?
I'm feeling some things.
I think it's really enjoyable. I've played a lot of battle royale games, and it's a little bit easier. Like it's like driving a Camry and not a Maserati. It's just as fun to drive, but you don't have to deal with like the paddle shifters and all that stuff. It's not as technical as some of the other battle royale games that are offered for us. Yeah, but how do you feel about it? I don't know if you have a lot of experience with battle royale games.
No, I mean I played Fortnite a couple times, but it wasn't really my scene. But I've only really recently started playing this game in the last month or so, 2 months. That's time is a illusion. But I've been, I wanted to come back every day, for better or worse. So yeah, I haven't lost interest yet, and I think that's pretty incredible, honestly.
Yeah.
It's that entertaining. I suppose, how does Matthew feel?
Yeah. Well, let's ready up and switch and get ready to drop back in now that our co-host has returned. Matthew, how are you feeling about this game so far? And what is your other? We know you're probably like the Fortnite pro of our trio situation we have right here. So how do you think it compares to other battle royale games and other tents that you would cover your hands with as well?
I would say, I mean, Fortnite succeeds as a marketing strategy very well because it works for a range of players of all ages. So, because it's less intense, it's less graphic, it's less violent. So So I mean, because it's almost cartoonish. The landscape. It's very. I mean, I remember when I've been playing different games for a while, and then switched to Fortnite. After having not played Fortnite for a while, I was like, wow, this is much more pleasant until you get into a fight. But it seems almost scenic how the trees are laid out. Um, it's much less chaotic, so it's amazing how you see how young the ages are of some of the kids who are playing it. Because and usually you wouldn't see kids this young playing these kinds of shooter games, but Fortnite is much more appealing to all ages. Um, so it works in that way because you can have people from all ages, and including streamers who still play it and don't think it's not too kiddish for them or whatever. It's not like Mario or whatever you were saying, Samuel, that like your brothers would only let you play when you were younger.
Mhm.
As a game, I think I mean, obviously it differs from Apex in that you have building, so you have to be much more strategic with Apex in terms of positioning and everything. But and you have to be just very skilled with building, especially because there's no. One of the things I noticed was that Fortnite has no recoil, and there's much more recoil and aim drift and whatever in Apex. So shooting is not the problem in Fortnite. It's being able to build and get positioning using building.
Mhm.
So you have to be much more skilled with aiming and weapons with Apex. What else? The ping system is a big plus for Apex. As we brought that up recently, I've really enjoyed being able to communicate that way without having to use a microphone. It's more difficult to communicate in Fortnite. Although in Fortnite you could also play solo, so that's a big difference too. You could play on your own, so
Yeah.
it's more of a social and teamwork aspect to playing Apex than playing Fortnite. I know a lot of people just prefer to, if they're not going to play with their friends, they're just going to play solo on their own. And so in that case, you're not gonna get that teamwork aspect. And yeah, it's just, anyway. So those are some of the differences.
Nice sprawl there for us. But
Yeah,
one other thing I forgot to note about Apex is it offers a lot of character diversity, which I think
that's
is really
true.
important.
That's true.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna bring that up as well.
yeah, I don't know if you want to speak on it, Harold, but there's a massive range of like ethnicities and genders and sexualities
Yep.
for our players and for the players they offer the players they offer the players. So I think that's another
The
great feature of
characters.
Apex.
Yeah, it's actually quite surprising because they really didn't have to, and I think they
Yeah.
really went out of their way to be inclusive because and um, especially with like um, there's a non-binary right
Hmm.
character in the game
Mhm.
uh, and there's a bunch of different cultures represented and so yeah it's really quite and it's seamless too, which I think is really cool because it's like no one really bats an eye. It's like it's not like, oh, this is obviously the character added so that um, to fill a quota. It's like it's very well done, very thoughtful, and I it's definitely not the reason I play the game, to be honest, but it's um, I definitely appreciate it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And it's also, like players usually play the people they like the abilities or the character they like the most. But for all the kids like who want to play in shells of people that actually like look like them, so they can feel like they're the hero that's winning the fight, I think that's super important too.
Hmm. No, I agree. And also, to
Yeah, I
make
was
the
gonna say.
game,
Go
Oh
ahead,
no,
Harold.
just
oh,
say,
no, no, no.
go
Let's
go
have
for it.
Matthew. Let's let Matthew have this moment.
You know what?
Yes, I apologize. I was focused.
You're absolutely right.
I would say another plus is that they didn't culturally appropriate in trying to include different cultures. In that like it was fun for me. Before we started playing this game, I was looking at some of the videos of the voice actors who play this or voice the characters for this game, and the man who voices Gibraltar, he thinks it's cool to be able to represent his own culture, and they made sure they stay truthful to the nature of the character and the culture they're trying to portray. And um, another thing is Well, I guess you already mentioned that. Yeah, it's nice to have a nice spread of genders, and a lot of equality. It's good.
So moving on to another point, about games, about gaming, and all that stuff, is this one, this one's tricky to go about, and I know Harold's already starting to laugh about it, but
I apologize.
it's all right. It's all right. No, but it's a serious thing. I think that like we've dabbled in it throughout this conversation, but gaming addictions and like bad habits are another big thing that especially relevant in the COVID quarantining and social distancing era that we are currently in, that it's problematic. And how do you feel about limitations and like what is the right age to give kids freedom to play games and all that stuff? How do you guys feel about that? I know that we've talked about my brothers and how they were a bit strict on the games you play and when you play them, but how do you guys feel about restrictions and making sure kids don't play games too much, especially when they're stuck inside all day?
I would say I'd leave it to the parents, but also it depends on the age. I think if someone's mature enough at the age they're playing a video game, then I'd leave it to them to know when to stop and to know what's a healthy amount of playing before I'm hurting my eyes looking at the screen for too long, or I've been sitting around for too long, or I need to get moving. So it depends. It depends on also, your limit sort of thing. Like some people, streamers, I assume, are more accustomed to playing video games for long periods of time. So I couldn't really say like, here's how much you should be playing daily as like a hard quota, but I'd say it
But
just
you
depends on the
do
person.
agree that like there should be limitations most of the time.
Sure.
Like, and for people who can't set their own, that they should be set by another
Mm-hmm.
party.
Yep,
Okay.
that's what I meant. Like depending on the age of the person playing the game.
I think so. So my reaction is initially very similar to Matthew's, that it's really up to the parents, and like I think parenting is a whole different question, and honestly, it's something I dread
Wow.
ever really experiencing, at least in part, dread experiencing. So, I really just don't have a direct answer to that. But I think that to sort of give an answer without giving an answer, I think that addiction is addiction, and like whatever form it comes in, and there are so many different mediums for addiction, and gaming is just one of them. So yeah, I think that it should be taken just as seriously as any other kind of addiction.
But you do think it's fine to use gaming as like an escape, not just a platform for, escape is a tricky word, but it's fine for kids, like if they need to get away from like, the stress of school or something that may be bothering them in their household. Do you think it's still fine to like resort to games as kind of a rock to lean on, like a world just to teleport yourself to? Or do you think that's
that's
unhealthy?
a tough question.
Yeah.
I think yes,
situation.
except not consistently.
Well, that's a dubious way to jump around the problem. I think it's a yes or no.
We gave the same answers, because I think, at least I believe we gave the same answer, because I said it's situational, because I think that, as I was saying, a problem is a problem, and so I mean the way that I would define like a gaming problem and what is if you can't stop. Because I mean I definitely have been gaming for long hours at a time, and probably shouldn't, maybe lost a little bit of sleep, but especially if someone else were to ask me like, hey, could you help me out with something just for a few minutes,
you'd be there.
help, like I would be there. Like I definitely have a separation of my video game life and my
You play the game doesn't play you.
True that.
Sure. Yeah. So
yeah. Matthew, do you have anything to say on that besides the fact that it's situational?
Not really. I mean, I think Harold covered it. I think I sort of worry about like if you go to really extreme lengths of like virtual reality again, sort of like what I said of before. If I haven't really heard of cases where anyone truly loses their sense of reality by spending too much time in virtual reality. But if you become dependent upon like escaping to your own virtual world in order to like feel a sense of security, I think that's unhealthy. Um, there should be different coping methods should be developed for yourself so that you can go about the real world feeling okay.
Hmm.
Um, so yes, it's situational. The reason why I say it depends on like consistency and how often you do it is like, let's say you've had a rough day, it might be nice to come home to be able to play video games or like take out your anger in some like virtual, velociraptor looking things or whatever, and be able to release some pent up feelings that way. But I wouldn't be consistently doing that or feeling like that's your only safe space. That becomes a problem.
Yeah, I think. I mean, something we haven't really talked about, but since we're getting into these broad terms, like online bullying is a thing, and
Yeah,
um,
especially in gaming.
yeah. So I think, especially in gaming, when you can have a conversation online with any random person, and so there can definitely be a detrimental psychological effect for young people, um, so I think that that's also a concern that like for these online games, but um, I don't know, it's sort of seems like what the only thing we're really coming to is that it's situational.
Yeah, which is a shame. Makes it a little bit easy, yeah.
Yeah, or difficult, I would say, in that we don't really know what we're.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard? I mean, I should ask. Have you guys ever heard of like anyone becoming too dependent upon video games, upon virtual reality to escape to?
I'm sure it has happened,
Mm-hmm.
Like I doubt it's. I mean, it doesn't sound like a very sellable news article, so I don't imagine we would read it on a place like there. But I do imagine it happens, and probably on a lesser scale too. Like hypothetical, weird, sad hypothetical. Like if a kid's going through a divorce, I imagine like if he has something like this to like constantly get him out of his head and get him out of the house in a way, he would really resort on that in like an unhealthy way and maybe like not deal with why he's feeling that way or what about it makes him sad.
Yeah,
But at
I
the
mean,
same time, we need things like that. It's super
yeah,
nuanced and
I
paradoxical
agree.
because
So,
the
so
good
what
of
I
two
was gonna say is
evils.
that I personally, I myself have been fortunate enough to not know, that many people who have suffered with any addiction of any kind.
Hmm.
So, I don't find it that surprising to not have heard of anyone um, with specifically that problem. So, um, but I don't know. I mean, it's something I kind of just hope I never have to deal with. To be honest, that sounds kind of maybe defeatist or not the right attitude to have. But um, but really just going back to the not a real answer I've been saying this whole time is that like addiction is addiction and it should be treated the same way across the board. So
Yeah, so an interesting spot to end, but we're heading towards the end of our time. We've put some time into this podcast and thus into this game. So how let's give it a rating. 1 out of 4 stars. Here we go, just like we did for Pulp Fiction.
wait,
Matthew, you're up first.
I'd give it a 3.5.
Unless anyone else has any other comments to run out the clock with. I just prefer. I know we have a habit of rating things.
Um, no, I think the only comments I would say is maybe like to explain a rating. I wouldn't give it a 4 out of 4, but I guess I'm trying to think of like what would make it a better experience that could make it a 4 out of 4. Um, I don't know.
Would you want building in a game like this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it would if you have incorporated building, it would dramatically change the game altogether.
Yeah, it would be
It would be
bonkers.
like reworking the foundations. Um, I don't know. It's hard to
Maybe.
say. I mean, it seems that having read the patch notes for season 5, it seems that they fixed a lot of stuff from the past season. Um, I know people said that last several seasons there was like a lot of problems of getting kicked off the game. The servers were inconsistent, so it's good that they fixed that.
So
Um,
sorry, just to clarify, patch notes means as it that just for anyone who doesn't know, patch notes is a term that for just sort of like a list of all the changes that have been made in a new update.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd probably give it 4 stars because I don't really have a good way to I don't have a good way to say to improve it. You know, I think it's pretty aces,
yeah,
honestly. So
Aces.
I'm gonna give it a 4, 4 out of 4. The
yeah.
big 4-0. Okay, all right, that's problematic in a lot of ways.
No, but I mean, I've definitely enjoyed it, and I think I'm glad that we've had it. Honestly, I'm grateful for it, which sounds dangerously close to what an addict might say, but
Yeah,
um, but no, I think it's definitely been a net positive for me. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean, we'll see how we develop because I've definitely been playing more video games than I ever have before. So
Mhm.
I mean, I wonder if whenever life goes back to normal, heavy air quotes there, is
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should mention for the sake of the podcast that, like, sort of as we were talking about the benefit of having video games right now, it's like I've never had. You guys know this, but your listeners don't. I've never had an Xbox up until this quarantine, and so I told my parents, I was like, well, if there were ever a time to have an Xbox, it's when we're isolated inside with nowhere else to go. So, um,
mm,
yes, I'm glad I am glad I've had this for this period of time. Um, makes coping with social distancing easier.
mm.
yeah. I think we're all glad we have our Xboxes to do things like this.
Uh-huh.
Well, you know what? Thanks everybody for listening in to our gaming episode, Chicken Shack. We hope you had a good time. Harold, can you send us out with a big so long?
So long.
Thanks for
That's
listening,
so
everybody.
long.
Peace out.
Okay. Bye.